Okay, so now I've made my initial approach to the subject. We're in the corporate environment, very typical set of offices, but atypical at the same time, because the one thing we do have going for us is a really beautiful view of Tampa Bay. So we're going to go for that. That's going to be a pleasing thing, a wonderful thing really to get in the photograph. Also going to be daunting because we have floor-to-ceiling windows. We're going to have to deal with reflections and the control of light. So that's a good lesson to engage in as a photographer. You can walk into just about any environment, put up an umbrella. Say, for instance, we did that the other day in the studio. As I mentioned the other day, light goes everywhere. We can't use that approach here. When light goes everywhere in a room like that, it's going to just bounce off of those windows, cause flare and reflection. Got to control that. That's going to be part of my first mission. What I'm going to do is go in there and sort out the exposure. I'll do my old kind of mental process here of just going click. I'll bring the camera in there. I'll just snap a couple of available light frames on aperture priority. That'll give me just a whole bunch of really valuable information right away. How intense that light is outside, where my reflections are, where I could possibly put the light, and also my frame. What's going to be in the frame? What am I going for here? Am I going to go for a close-in portrait of Chris where he kind of stands and gives me eye contact, or more of a working desk portrait? I'll sort that out as we go. Behind me, of course, Aaron and Brad are working with a whole ton of gear. Seems like overkill, I know that. But here's the thing, redundancy is really valuable in a situation like this. We've got it, we might as well bring it, okay? Because you don't want to get in there and have something, A, malfunction, and you haven't got a replacement, or B, get into, as I indicated, a specialized lighting situation where we can't use an umbrella, or certain maybe standard approaches of lighting. We're going to have to cut light and shape it in some interesting or hopefully reflection-free way. So the trick here is going to be lighting Chris well, but not the windows. And also, in addition to seeing Chris really nicely lit, we're going to take a look at the environment and get that sweep and that view, which is always a nice thing to include in a corporate portrait. All right, so let's put a 1424 on camera and make sure both cameras have cards, because I'm going to go in there and just do some clicking away. I've got the benefit of a very, very picturesque office. Also not a overwhelmingly large office. I'm going to have to be careful about where I put my light. But that gives me a starting point, an idea of how the graphics of the room might play into a dynamic portrait. And now I have to arrange my thinking to place Chris, my subject, in that environment. And then what I do once I get that relatively placed in my head, I'll back the lighting solution out of that. Where can I put my light where I'm not going to be completely blowing away windows or seeing slivers of light, and I can retain that beautiful scene we're seeing out the window. The other thing that I've asked Chris and my dialogue with him today as my subject is going to be all about me being reasonable. I know that sounds strange, but I'm going to try to pull off the illusion that I'm a rational human being, at least for a while. Things that you can, question the subject about, even if you already know the answer. They're good things to do, like what's your timeline like? What might be possible? Do you think it would be possible if I did this? Here's my objective. If you explain yourself in a rational way, you will gain the confidence of the subject. Because as a photographer, we oftentimes forget that the ice we're standing on may be very, very thin indeed. You never know what the last experience with a photographer was. The last photographer up here to do a portrait might have been arrogant or obnoxious. I know that sounds completely ridiculous when referring to the genre of human being known as photographer, but they could have done a bad job. They could have been late. They could have been sloppy. They could have left a bad impression, in other words. What you're, hopefully going to counter, of course, is that bad impression, if one was made, and create your own good impression, that you start the thing rolling in your subject's head. Okay, all right, the guy sounds reasonable. He understands that I'm running a business here. He understands there are time constraints. He understands there's physical restraints. He is willing to work with me to be cooperative, and he's not going to come in and just, as the English say, bash on regardless, and like disrupt the flow here and just be completely, a loose cannon in our work environment for the day. So I really try to convey to the subject right from the get-go that as much as I possibly can, I'm going to be have the least amount of impact on their infrastructure. Coming in again, Chris. Sorry to keep interrupting you here. I'm going to ask Chris to work with me. He can continue to stay at his desk for a minute here. So it's maybe not typical of a corporate shoot in certain ways. Chris is pretty personable, and this is fairly, I describe it as a laid-back environment.
Yeah,
you know, the differences occur as you start to ratchet through certain echelons of corporate America. I would not, for instance, have the chairman of General Electric coming and posing for me, or that sort of thing doesn't happen. But the wonderful thing that's occurred today is that Chris is very approachable. He runs the show here, but it's a fairly relaxed corporate environment. We're going to work with him and come up with a good photograph. Also, it speaks to the manner of dress. I'm fairly casual for a corporate environment. That's been an increasingly a phenomenon throughout corporate America. You know, the casual Fridays. You know, lots of businesses really just you know, don't enforce a really strict dress code anymore. But oftentimes too, if I'm doing, say, a corporate board of a Fortune 500 company or something like that, I'm going to go the business suit route and jacket and tie, those kinds of things. But here, thankfully, it's a pretty relaxed environment, thanks to Chris. So, Chris, I'm going to ask you to come around to this side of the desk. And again, these are in the realm of scouting pictures, but I just want to see kind of spatially how the room will work out. Okay. Maybe come forward just a touch, if you wouldn't mind. All right. That's pretty nice right there. And okay. Now, Chris is just going to be silhouette because I have no lighting happening here, but I'm just trying to get a placement. Maybe, again, just take another step forward if you don't mind, and try to remember this pose because you look casual, you look great. We're going to set up our lights in here. It's going to impede access a little bit, but you'll still be able to come and go.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
All right, thanks.